Welcome everybody. We just wanted to give you, my name's Mark Grote. I'm here with Andrew Todd from Rice Extension, and we're just going to give you a quick rundown on the Rice dashboard, particularly in relevance to moisture or the grain dry down to aid with that drainage decision. So for those of you who have used the dashboard, you'll know that it's been very relevant throughout the whole growing season. And particularly with predictions on the PI date, flowering dates, and now the 22% moisture date. So this is probably relevant for those who haven't had a lot to play with it. We'll go back to basics, but it will be on a concentration specifically on that on the grain dry down, 22% moisture, and how we can aid with that drainage decision. So Andrew, I'll throw it over to you. If you could just show the what growers need to actually get the Rice dashboard, and then just a bit of a rundown on what they'll see and how they can use it.
All right, thanks, Mark. So you will have been emailed a couple of times later last year, and we're about to email it again in the next few days. You'll get an email from Rice Extension that looks like this. It'll have a link that says click here for your link to the dashboard. Click that and it'll take you to this page, which is the landing page of the dashboard. It opens up, defaults to the current year, and it will open one of the farms that you've got if you've got more than one, and it will open on your N index and the most recent image date. So just to check that everyone knows where they are, your year on your right-hand menu, top drop-down menu is your year. You can go back to 2018. If you've got multiple farms, they'll be under the farm menu. Paddocks will be under the paddock menu. And then your index is where you'll find where to change from N index to grain moisture. So click that and then click down to your grain moisture, which is where you'll find your prediction line of where your crop's predicted to hit 22% moisture. For any later crops, you won't have a 22% moisture date yet. You might have the start of a line where it doesn't intersect 22% moisture. So you'll have imagery that suggests the crop is near 30%, and then subsequent images will come through when there's clear satellite passes, and the points will show up as green crosses if it's a clear image, grey crosses if it's cloudy, and that's where it'll predict the dry down of your crop. That prediction's based on your satellite imagery, which uses all the bands from the Sentinel-2 satellite, and then inputs the 28-day forecast to show what the model predicts the dry down rate's going to be to give you your 22% prediction date.
Excellent. So just on that, so the email will come from Rice Extension. And the index we're looking for in this situation is the grain moisture. So the other indices are through the growing period, the nitrogen index and NDVI and so on. So we're looking specifically at grain moisture. As Andrew said, if you don't have it yet, it just means that you're basically too far away from the window. Is that a fair comment, Andrew?
Correct. Yep.
But it will be coming. So just keep an eye on it and where it's at. The reason we really wanted to do this video is we've got this recording. We've got paddocks that are approaching 22% moisture. Crops are ahead of themselves this year, anywhere from a week to 3 weeks ahead of themselves. And harvest has already kicked off. Some are at optimum moisture, others are already at relatively low moisture and coming into wet ground, which is a bit of a nightmare situation, both from a harvestability point of view and a quality point of view. So we're really trying to nail down and use this really excellent tool available to us to get that. Andrew's also done a heap of ground truthing with this, and this is also ground truth with DPI. So far it's proving relatively accurate. So well worth using the tool and have a look at it. So, but anyway, Andrew, just keep going what they'll see and how they use it.
Yep. All right. So the average line will show in your growth curves tab. So across the top, you've got different tabs you can look at. So the average that will show when you change to grain moisture will be the average of your paddock, or the middle of the 5 zones. So the imagery will be captured, and then the paddock will be split into your five separate zones, which is your second tab across the top. So if you click on that, you'll see where your 5 relative zones of moisture are within that paddock. So there may be 1% variation between their zones. There may be 10% variation between those zones. So there's a couple of ways you can pick that up. One would be the distance between the lines. So on your scale on the left is your prediction of moisture. On the bottom axis is your date. So lines that are further apart suggest that the zones within the paddock are higher variation in moisture between the zones. If you're looking to work out your rate of dry down, you can hover your mouse over any point on one of those lines. It'll give you the date and the predicted moisture for that date for that zone. If you follow that same line down, for instance, 7 days, take the two values minus the early one and divide it by 7, gives you the average rate of dry down per day. At the moment, we're sitting around that sort of 0.4 to 0.6% dry down per day, but that'll change as we move through the season with the temperature and conditions as they change.
Yep. So if they wanted to, then you've got different zones. If you wanted to actually go out and have a look at the paddock, so this one particular is looking at 22% moisture on the 6th of March. We'll go, give us the, we'll go through what that means in a tick. So if they wanted to actually go out in the paddock and ground truth that, how do they go about that? How do they know where those zones are? All that sort of thing.
Yep. So your fourth tab across the top is your map image of your paddocks. So if you click on that, it'll take a little bit of time to load, and that's just Google in the background, loading all the data for you, and it will open up to whichever paddock you've got selected, and it'll have that paddock boundaried by a pink or purple sort of boundary. It'll also show all your other paddocks that are in rice on that particular farm. If you've got multiple farms, it won't show all the farms in one image. You'll have to change your farm, and then it'll reload the image. But this particular farm's got a number of paddocks on it. It will center on the paddock that you've selected. So if the one you've selected is off to the side of the farm, you can just click on the mouse and hold it and drag the map around to get it in the center of the image. You can zoom with the buttons on the left here, and your little map inset key tells you what indice you're looking at, the date, and then it gives you the zones in picture format. So it's grouping the moisture areas within the paddock according to the curve we looked at previously of those 5 zones to give you which areas of the paddock are sitting in each zone.
So we're looking particularly at that paddock where you're hovering over there, where that boundary is.
Yes.
Yep. So that one there, and the 5 zones according to that zonal graph you had. That's the actual pictorial image of it.
Correct. Yep. And if you want to look at the data that sits behind that in terms of the actual satellite pixels, which are a 10 by 10 meter squared image, you can click this little pixels box in the bottom corner there, which will go from the zones to the actual predicted moistures. So your scale across the bottom here is 14% moisture through to 30% moisture. It gives you a better indication of what the actual moisture levels are predicted to be in the paddock rather than just giving you a colour. If you don't like to use the pixels, you can click anywhere within any of the zones, whether you've got pixels off or pixels on. If you click, it'll calculate it'll tell you the paddock, the PI date, because it was focused on a PI N uptake prediction when the model was developed. It's then been extended to this. It'll give you the grain moisture for that particular zone. It'll tell you which zone, and it'll also tell you what the prediction at that particular point in the paddock is. So if you wanted to go and ground truth it, which you need to do to be able to determine the right time to drain, you would look at the paddock imagery and go, okay, I want to sample, for instance, this paddock, you want to sample the drier zone as well as maybe the middle or towards the later end of maturity, so you can best time your drainage based on the relative maturity of the zones of the paddock. So to do that, you would click on a point. You can turn your zones and your pixels off in your little layers tab. to be able to see your bays, which sit underneath it. If you zoom in far enough, you can get a rough idea of what bay of the paddock you're in. Obviously, north is up on the map, and then you can position yourself in the paddock to get an estimate of what your ground truth moisture is, and then make your drainage decision from there.
So just go back to that layers tab again. That was a quick one. So that one on the top corner there, just not on the far right, the one next to it, got all the different layers and so on to show it. So important there, the pixels, just click off those pixels again.
Yep, so you can do the pixels in two spots. You can either do it in there or in the box here. This box will override what you're doing there. So if you've got the pixels box ticked here, you can turn it off in here, but it won't come back on in your layers tab.
Right. Okay. All right. That was confusing. But either way, just the pixels give you the absolute value. The zones just give you the relative value, and a dark green in one paddock is not the same as a dark green in another paddock. It's just dividing that paddock into its relative zone. So you can see when you go onto pixels then that the dark green on the specific paddock we're looking at is now a shaded blue, which means it's sitting up around that 26, 27%, whereas the paddock next to it is still above 30%. So the zonal bit is just somewhere for you to sample if you want to take in a sample to ground truth it, but the pixel will give you an absolute value. So yeah.
Yep. And the other thing that's worth looking at is your weather tab and your summary tab. So your weather will give you the forecast data moving forwards, which is what your grain moisture predictions are based off. And your summary tab will just give you your 22% moisture date predictions for all your paddocks on that particular farm. So if you want to know which paddocks to look at to start with, that would be if you've got multiple paddocks across multiple farms, have a quick flick through each farm, work out which ones are early, and then prioritise your management decisions from there.
So, and just out of interest, this is a Redden farm, unidentified, but all those paddocks here are drained, except the 21st of March one, which if you're looking at the 21st of March, the day we're recording this is the 4th. It takes 2 weeks to get off the paddock. That's then the 18th, so it's getting relatively close to the mark. So on the moisture prediction, so Andrew was saying when you hover over a certain point or you click on a certain point in the map, you get the actual predicted moisture over at that point. At 26% moisture, your crop is physiologically mature. So it doesn't need to be standing in water anymore, and regardless of what the weather's doing, that grain is going to dry down regardless. So your paddock can be trafficable or should be trafficable at 24% and absolutely should be trafficable at 22%. So we really want that moisture to be as high as possible come harvest to both maximise yield and quality. So this time last year we were starting harvest at 17%. In one particular depot in the north, we were looking at an average harvest moisture of 15% on the 1st of April. So this year, it'd be great to be kicking off. We've already kicked off harvest at 22.1%, so which is perfect. But the higher you can get that harvest moisture, the only influence we've got over quality at this point in the season is high harvest moisture between 18 and 22%. So ideally, if we can use this tool, both maximise yield and maximise quality and optimise paddock conditions to get that grain off high moisture and before rain potentially comes along. Anything else to add on that, Andrew?
No, just keep an eye out for the email from Rice Extension in the coming days with your link. If you've got any questions, give myself or Mark a call. If you can't access the link, or if it doesn't show up in your inbox, check your junk email folder.
Yeah, and we'll send a text out with that as well. So, and if your agronomist isn't utilising this dashboard and isn't showing it to you, do send it to him, to them, and just go through it, because it's proving to be a very valuable tool and it is being ground truthed regularly, as in there's about 200 odd samples a week being put through this at the grain moisture validation. So yes, it's certainly spur. If the least it does is to spur you in to go and have a look at the paddock and see where you're at, then it's done its job. So good luck with it. And as Andrew said, feel free to give us a call anytime if you want a bit more clarification or you want us to go